According to a new study from UC San Diego, teenagers who drink booze are likely to have reduced brain tissue health, but the same cannot be said for teens who smoke weed. 92 16 to 20-year-olds were studied over an 18-month period. Few disclaimers. The study's authors say more research is needed to reach a definitive conclusion, and this wasn't a test of performance or intellect. And an earlier Duke study found that teens who smoke pot risk a long-term drop in IQ. So how do we reconcile all this stuff? Joining us now is Kathleen Miles of HuffPost LA.
It's not definitive, and the question of how to put together the two studies, they don't know the answers to. This study was distinct in that they were looking at physical brain scans. So they took scans of these brains at the beginning of 18 months, and then they set two sets of teenagers off. One were drinking and smoking, and when I say smoking, I mean marijuana, and the other was abstaining from both. Afterwards, they saw physical reduced, what they call white matter brain tissue in the brains of the teens that were drinking at least five drinks, which is a lot, at least twice a week. But the marijuana smoking teens who were doing it an average of 9 times a week saw no difference in their brain. So that's a physical brain scan. And then, as you mentioned, that study a few months ago was IQ test. So that one looked at performance, intelligence. And they did see that if you smoked marijuana before 18, substantially, you could lose some points in your IQ. So is it possible that, like you said, Jacob, these kids are getting dumber, but they can't see it in the brain scan? Yeah, that is possible. The researcher did tell me that. They don't actually know the correlation between the brain scan and performance.
Of course, as a reason to go out and get blazed, then we should say that you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that.
Absolutely.
Well, what I think that we can take from this is, clear there are going to be a lot of studies coming out over the years. There's still a lot of information that people want gleaned from marijuana.
It's the long-term studies that you need in order to see any significant impact, obviously.
And those don't exist, unfortunately. And, you're right. The one thing we do know is that teenage brains are developing all the way until your young 20s. They're vulnerable. And I think this was a really great study to show that alcohol, even though researchers have known this, even with adult brains, it reduces memory, it reduces attention span, decision-making skills. It's a good reminder, because I think a lot of people don't think about that when they're drinking, especially if you're drinking to the point of having a hangover. The marijuana studies are going to need to continue because there's so many different strands of marijuana with different levels of THC, and the long-term studies need to happen, especially because the use is up. 25% of seniors are reporting having used marijuana in the last month. That was just a study yesterday. So all other drug use is down except for marijuana. So as it becomes less stigmatized, we do need to understand it, especially when it comes to teens.